Most men don't lose everything in one moment. They disappear politely. One apology at a time. One ignored instinct. One emotional compromise, just to keep her close. This is the modern erosion of masculinity. Calm, quiet, well-behaved, and powerless. Not because they were weak, but because they were taught that being respected and being liked were the same thing. They're not. But this isn't a new pattern, only a modern version of an old trap. Because long before emotional intelligence became currency, there was a different kind of intelligence, strategic wisdom, tested by time, sharpened by danger, obsessed with results. And no one embodied that more than Machiavelli. He didn't write about feelings, he wrote about power. This video is not about feeling better. It's about becoming untouchable. Let's begin. Before you conquer anything outside of you, there's one adversary you must eliminate first, and he lives inside your head. It's the quiet, familiar voice that tells you, you've done enough, when you haven't. That whispers, rest, you deserve it, just as the pressure starts building. That excuses your inaction as recovery, your hesitation as self-care, your softness as virtue. That voice is not your friend. It's your leash. That's the first war. Not with the world, but with the fragile version of you still begging to be understood, still hoping someone will come fix what life broke. But no one is coming. Not your friends. Not your partner. Not fate. The modern world doesn't reward intention, it responds only to outcome. Not how you feel, but what you do. Not what you meant, but what you built. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, long before self-help books and online validation. He wrote not for men seeking to be loved, but for those determined to rule. And the core of his philosophy is still deadly accurate today. Separate your emotions from your execution. Govern your mind as ruthlessly as a prince governs his state. Because if you don't, someone else, or something else, will do. This is the part most men never master. Everyone says they want to be powerful, until they realize that real power doesn't feel good. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't soothe you when you're tired. It demands that you act even when you're empty. Especially when you're empty. That's the crucible that burns off the weakness, if you let it. But most men don't. They try to rise while dragging their old selves with them. The people pleaser. The oversharer. The one who needed to be liked. Who needed to explain. Who needed to be forgiven for wanting more. That version must die. If you want to level up, your comfort must burn. If you want to become unbreakable, you must become unreadable, not as a performance, but as a new default. If this hit deeper than you'd admit out loud, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe. New strategy drops daily. Don't just scroll, sharpen. You're not here to chase applause. You're here to disappear into your missions so fully that they don't even recognize the man you become. Not because you changed overnight, but because you stopped asking for permission. You stopped broadcasting your grind. You stopped seeking emotional receipts from people who never respected the investment in the first place. And that's the shift, when you stop explaining, stop posting, stop looking around, and start building. In silence. In obscurity. Without updates. Without validation. That's where power is born. While they scroll, you plan. While they gossip, you train. While they relax, you suffer. With aim, with clarity, with patience. They laugh at you now because you're invisible. Because they don't see the results yet. But Machiavelli would call that an advantage. He understood the power of shadows. He knew that true transformation happens out of sight. Because what they can't see, they can't anticipate. What they can't measure, they can't control. What they can't access, they can't sabotage. And so your silence becomes your armor. Your distance becomes your leverage. Your restraint becomes your strategy. The men who lose are the ones who seek applause mid-transformation, who show their hand too early, who broadcast the battle before the victory. But you vanish. You give them nothing. No weakness to feed on, no updates to track. You go dark. Not to disappear, but to develop. Quietly. Intentionally. Until the version of you they remember becomes a myth. Because when you come back, you don't owe anyone an explanation. Not for your distance. Not for your change. Not for your power. They'll ask where you've been. You won't answer. You'll just keep moving, sharper, colder, silent. Because you didn't vanish. You evolved. This is where most men lose the game long before they realize they're even playing one. They want the spotlight before they've sharpened the blade. They crave recognition while still being average. They expect applause just for showing up, not for finishing the war. They're addicted to visibility, not mastery. And that addiction is what ruins them. They think being seen makes them powerful. But being seen too soon only makes you predictable, and predictability is weakness. When your progress becomes a performance, you've already lost the advantage. Applause weakens your hunger. Validation slows your pace. And support, if you begin to need it, becomes a leash so tight you forget what freedom felt like. That leash must be cut. Not gradually. Immediately. Obscurity is not punishment. It's the forge. The place where clarity sharpens. Where your identity hardens. Where no one can interrupt your evolution with feedback, noise, or distraction. And so you move, quietly. Without posts. Without updates. Without validation. You don't announce your reinvention. You live it. Disappear so completely that even your name becomes a question. Let them forget your potential. Let them gossip about your failure. Let them assume your silence means surrender. That's the trap. Their arrogance creates your cover. Because while they watch for signs of life, you are already building a new one. When you return, it won't be with noise. It won't be with a story. It will be with such weight, such undeniable presence, that every word they ever spoke behind your back collapses under the proof standing in front of them. That's the goal, not to be recognized while you're changing, but to return so radically transformed that no one dares speak your name without respect. Your silence becomes their obsession. Your absence becomes their discomfort. Your progress becomes their punishment. Let them speculate. Let them joke. Let them sleep on your name. Because when you come back, not broken but rebuilt, you won't need to explain anything. Results don't ask for validation. They command it. You don't come back with apologies or smiles. You come back with precision, with power, with proof. And that's all you'll need. So if you want to be unbreakable, fall in love with isolation. Not because you're bitter, but because you're building. And what you're building isn't for their eyes. It's for their shock. Isolation isn't loneliness. It's leverage. It strips away distraction. It teaches patience. It kills weakness. And it births the version of you that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, and doesn't care who's watching. Because now, you're not building for them. You're building for war. And when they finally ask where you've been all this time, you don't need to speak. You just stand still, calm, grounded, untouchable. Because you were never gone. You were just making sure the next time they saw you, they wouldn't survive the comparison. Strength is not raw intensity. It's not loud confidence or emotional firepower. True strength is restraint, precision, control. You can have intellect, ambition, and even talent. But without control over your emotions, you are nothing but a weapon without aim. Dangerous to yourself. Predictable to others. And in a Machiavellian world, predictable means powerless. Because emotion, when mastered, becomes a tool. But emotion, when ungoverned, becomes a leash, and the world will pull it every time it wants you to dance. That's how they break men now, not with violence, but with emotional manipulation. They trigger your anger and call it passion. They play with your guilt and call it empathy. They watch your overreactions and call it being in touch. But the truth is this: every time you react without calculation, you hand them the reins. If you want to be unbreakable, the first rule is internal silence. Not just on the surface, but in the mind. No spirals. No panic. No chaos. A battlefield cleared of noise. Because stillness under pressure is the signature of power. When you stay composed, you control the rhythm. When you don't react, they run out of moves. When your heart rate stays level while there's spikes, they start to feel exposed, not you. You win, and they never see how. Most people, however, are emotional landmines waiting to be stepped on. One insult? Detonation. One failure? Collapse. One look of judgment? Full retreat. They have no internal structure, only emotional reflexes. And they call that being real. But Machiavelli would disagree. He warned us, wear the mask. Play the part. But never let your role consume your rule. You must appear calm, kind, grounded, even virtuous. But underneath that mask, your discipline must be absolute. So don't show your rage, turn it into accuracy. Don't show your sadness, use it to sharpen your vision. Don't display your joy, channel it into quiet momentum. Keep them guessing. Let the world wonder what moves you, what bothers you, what keeps you up at night. The less they know, the less they can weaponize. You are not here to be emotionally transparent. You are here to be unshakable. Because the man who bleeds publicly, who explains every insecurity, who reveals every storm, is not feared. He's studied. And what is studied can be predicted. What is predicted can be controlled. Look around. People are enslaved not by governments, not by systems, but by their own reactions. A comment ruins their day. A moment of rejection derails a month of effort. They wait for motivation to move, instead of moving despite the chaos. They confuse emotion with identity. But identity built on feelings crumbles in storms. Power does not cry for permission. It does not ask to be understood. Power simply endures. Kings do not share their wounds with the crowd. Wolves do not explain their hunger to sheep. And rulers do not hand their enemies a map to their mind. So here is your law: master your emotions, or be mastered by those who can manipulate them. Because every time you expose how you feel, someone out there sharpens a weapon and writes your downfall in silence. And you? You must remain quiet. That's not inhuman. It's untouchable. Control doesn't begin when chaos ends. It begins when you refuse to let chaos inside. This is where most men fail. They mistake emotional reaction for power, as if being loud, volatile, and real somehow equals strength. But real strength doesn't announce itself. It observes. It calculates. It holds still while everyone else burns out in noise. That's the law of execution through observation. Control starts here, not in dominance, not in defiance, but in silence. When someone mocks you, betrays you, lies to your face, your instinct is to react, to defend, to lash out. That instinct is the leash. Cut it. Instead, you observe. You study the pattern, the motive, the frequency. You wait not passively but precisely. Because when you stop reacting, you start learning. And when you stay silent while they try to provoke, your silence becomes their mirror, reflecting their weakness, their insecurity, their desperation. They expect your anger, you stay cold. They bait your ego, you stay still. They scream for attention, you give them nothing. And that nothing is power. It doesn't just disarm individuals. It stabilizes your entire life. When tragedy comes, you do not break. When failure arrives, you adjust, refine, and return. When praise surrounds you, you nod, but never kneel to it. Because nothing external has power over a man who controls the battlefield within. This doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means your emotions report to you, not the other way around. Your anger has a place, but only when summoned. Your pain is acknowledged, but never leaked. Your passion is real, but weaponized, not wasted. You don't scream. You strategize. You don't seek sympathy. You move in calculated silence. You don't prove your worth to others. You prove it to yourself, through quiet execution, day after day, no audience needed. And this is what makes you unreadable, unshakable, unbreakable. Because once people realize they can't find your pressure points, can't bait your ego, can't provoke a crack in your presence, they fear you. Not because you're violent, but because you're disciplined. And discipline, in a world addicted to validation, is the rarest and most terrifying form of strength. Machiavelli understood this well. He didn't write about explosive reactions. He wrote about composure, about the mask of virtue, about staying calm when others are blinded by panic, and striking only when the outcome is certain. His model of power was not emotional domination. It was emotional sovereignty. That's your goal. Not to be understood, but to be unmoved. Not to prove your strength, but to operate so silently and so precisely that your results become the only language you speak. Because the man who controls nothing within is controlled by everything without. And the man who cannot be read cannot be broken. Emotional control doesn't strip you of humanity, it shields you from manipulation. The man who can govern himself under pressure, in silence, without needing to explain or retaliate, becomes immune to those who feed off reaction. He stops being readable. And when you're unreadable, you're untouchable. So stop reacting. That's the first step. Because reaction is the language of slaves. Slaves to ego, to insecurity, to other people's perception. Begin to respond instead, and do it in silence. Let your composure speak for you. Let your stillness unsettle them. Let your discipline make people rethink how they approach you. Because when nothing gets a rise out of you, when no insult, betrayal, or disappearance shakes your balance, you become something rare, something others will never fully understand, untouchable. Not because you're invincible, but because you're no longer emotionally accessible. And if you want to reach that level, there's one brutal truth you have to face. Loyalty is temporary. People aren't loyal to you, they're loyal to what they get from you. Your presence, your support, your energy, your usefulness. Once that utility fades, so does their attachment. That's not pessimism, that's data. And the moment you stop expecting eternal loyalty is the moment you stop being breakable. Because it won't matter how kind you were, how much you gave, how consistently you showed up, people will leave anyway. They'll betray when it suits them. They'll forget you when it's easy. That doesn't make them evil. It makes them human. But Machiavelli knew better than to trust in the myth of permanent allegiance. He said it with ruthless accuracy, the promise given was a necessity of the past, the word broken is a necessity of the present. Alliances shift. Sides change. People adapt to advantage. The mistake isn't that you trusted them. The mistake is that you needed them. You want to be unbreakable? Then strip yourself of need. Become your own foundation, your own guard tower, your own forward force. Relying on others is the architecture of collapse. Because the world doesn't punish the weak. It forgets them. Quietly. Efficiently. People will clap when you win, but they'll also nod when you fall. Not from hatred, but from envy wrapped in politeness. Your resilience will remind them of their fragility, and they'll cope by walking away. They'll disappear when your vision becomes too big. Doubt you when your goals exceed their imagination. Abandon you when you need them most, and that's good. That's your test. It's better to walk alone than to drag dead weight. Let their exit refine you. Let the silence of their absence forge you. Because men who are truly unbreakable aren't built in crowds, they're carved out of solitude, shaped by discipline, and born again in the moments everyone else left. There comes a point, and if you're on this path, you'll feel it, when the noise disappears. The support fades. The validation dries up. People vanish, not in protest, but in quiet indifference. And in that silence, all that's left is your will. That's the turning point. The moment you stop outsourcing your strength. The moment you realize no one's coming, and no one ever was. The illusion of support, of shared burdens, of being carried through the fire, dissolves. And something ancient, something sharp, wakes up inside you. From that moment on, your eyes shift. You no longer look outward for backup. You start building inward, brick by silent brick. Not as a defense mechanism, but as an act of liberation. Because the fewer people you rely on, the less vulnerable you become. Independence isn't a luxury anymore. It's your armor. It's your insurance against betrayal. And when you no longer expect loyalty, you're free. Free from the ache of disappointment. Free from the fragility of waiting. Free from the leash of needing to be understood. And no, this isn't about bitterness. You don't need to hate anyone. Hate is still an attachment. You simply outgrow the myth that someone else will love you more than they love themselves. Most won't. Most people won't bleed with you in the dark. They won't stay when staying becomes inconvenient. They won't endure pain just to stand beside you. That's not cruelty. It's human nature. And it's a gift when you finally accept it, because now you can stop pretending. You stop holding the door open for loyalty that was never real. You stop feeding connections that were never built to last. And you stop hoping someone else will carry a vision they don't even see. Because the only loyalty you ever needed was to the mission, the goal, the war you were built to win. That's the battlefield. And you don't win it by hoping people don't defect. You win it by being strong enough to finish alone. So let them go. Let them lie. Let them rewrite the story in their absence. It doesn't matter. Because you're not here to be surrounded. You're here to be solid. That's why you train yourself to move without applause. To grind when no one's watching. To make decisions without needing permission. To rise without being lifted. That's where true power lives. In the quiet, in the shadows, in the brutal truth that no one owes you anything. And you don't need them to. Because when they're all gone, and at some point you'll still be standing. Sharper. Unbreakable. But that strength demands one final law. You must be willing to walk alone. Not for a season, not until someone understands, not until you're strong enough. Alone. Indefinitely. Because the most dangerous man is not the one admired by many. It's the one who needs no one. Machiavelli understood the solitude of power. He knew that to truly rise, you must first detach. Not from love, but from need. Not from people, but from dependence. Walking alone isn't exile, it's evolution. It strips away weakness, quiets the distractions, and shows you exactly who you are when there's no one left to impress. Most people can't survive that silence. They need likes to keep moving. They need feedback to keep trying. They need to be seen just to feel real. But you'll do the opposite. You'll disappear, not in defeat, but in design. While they chase connection, you'll build discipline. While they seek warmth, you'll forge clarity. While they fear being alone, you'll weaponize it. Because when you've walked alone long enough, something irreversible happens. You stop asking. You stop explaining. You stop needing to be seen. You just build. Quietly. Relentlessly. Without interruption. Without noise. And by the time they notice, it's already too late. They think strength is loud. That leadership is about visibility. That respect comes from how many people like you. But those who are truly unbreakable know, real respect comes from silence, from distance, from the quiet certainty that says, I don't need your praise. I don't need your permission. I don't need to be understood. And that's what unsettles them. Because they can't manipulate someone who doesn't crave attention. They can't guilt a man who feels no need to please. They can't corner someone who doesn't explain himself. Once you've learned to walk alone, not by accident, but by principle, you stop being readable. And when they can't read you, they can't reach you. Let them assume you vanished. Let them whisper, mock, speculate. While they're busy measuring your silence, you're becoming something they can't measure at all. You're becoming the version they never believed you had the discipline to become. And when you return, you won't explain your absence. You won't defend your distance. You won't say a word. You'll walk in colder, clearer, sharper. And they won't recognize you, because they were never supposed to. That's how the unbreakable rise. Not with noise. With precision. With stillness. With power no one saw coming.